Welcome to the Black Struggle. If you are new here, please like and subscribe this channel and be the part of this wonderful community. Let's dive into today's story. I never imagined my life would come full circle like this, and yet here I am, scrubbing marble floors in someone else's mansion, at an age when I should have been surrounded by grandchildren and peace. Funny thing is, people say life has its own sense of humor. But when you're bent over a bucket with your knees aching and your back screaming, humor isn't the word you'd use. Cruel feels more fitting. My name is Delilah, and before you judge me for being just a maid, I want you to hear the whole story. Because once you do, you'll understand that I wasn't always this way. I was once a teacher. For nearly 3 decades, I stood in front of classrooms filled with third graders, guiding their little hands through math problems, listening to them read their first full paragraphs out loud, wiping away tears when they stumbled. Teaching wasn't just my job, it was my calling. My husband, Clarence, was a high school math teacher right down the hall from me. We were the couple people in our community pointed to as the example. We had steady jobs, modest lives, and a dream that felt bigger than anything money could buy. We wanted children, and for a while, it seemed like that dream might never happen. Then, when I was 28, I found out I was pregnant. Not just with one baby, but twins. I can still feel the joy that ran through me the day I brought Jeremiah and Jasmine home. 2 tiny miracles with eyes that seemed too big for their faces. Clarence would sit for hours just rocking them, humming old Motown songs like his father had done for him. Our little family was everything I had prayed for. But prayers, I learned, sometimes don't last forever. One Saturday, when the twins were almost 2, we went to the Eastland Mall. It was supposed to be a simple family outing. Clarence wanted to browse ties for church, and I let the babies play in the little kids area. I remember laughing at how determined Jasmine was to climb up a foam elephant, while Jeremiah tried to push toy cars across the mat. And then in one blink, just one blink, they were gone. My whole world slipped away in less than a minute. Security cameras failed, witnesses had nothing useful, and the police told us it looked like a professional job. My babies were stolen from me in broad daylight, and all I had left was the sound of my own screaming voice echoing through that mall. For years, Clarence and I searched. We hired private investigators, mortgaged our home, followed any lead no matter how thin. Each phone call that ended in disappointment felt like another nail in my coffin. But we never gave up. We couldn't. Every day I still walked into my classroom with a smile plastered on my face, hiding the emptiness inside, because other people's children still needed me. And maybe that was my way of surviving. If I couldn't raise Jeremiah and Jasmine, then I could make sure someone else's little boy had shoes without holes, or someone else's little girl had lunch when she forgot hers. Clarence used to tease me that I was keeping the dollar store in business with all the supplies I bought, but he never told me to stop. He understood those children had become my lifeline. Life, though, doesn't stop to let you catch your breath. Years rolled into decades. The twins never came home. Then Clarence got sick. It started with a cough that wouldn't go away, and before we could make sense of it, the doctor said the words no one wants to hear: lung cancer, stage 3. We fought it as best we could: chemotherapy, radiation, endless hospital visits. He joked sometimes that cancer had picked the wrong math teacher to mess with, but in the end, even his strength wasn't enough. 3 years later, he was gone, and with him went the last anchor holding me steady. By then, our savings were drained, our home was mortgaged beyond recognition, and I was left with nothing but a pile of bills and an empty bed. I kept teaching, though. It was the only thing that gave me reason to wake up. Until the district announced budget cuts and offered me early retirement. I had no choice. At 58, I found myself jobless, widowed, childless, and nearly penniless. That's how I ended up here. Not by choice, but by the cruel hand life had dealt me. A neighbor whispered about a wealthy family looking for live-in help. I told myself it was just temporary. Just until I found something better. I showed up at their mansion in my best navy dress, clutching my resume that no one even bothered to read. That's when I met Valencia, the young lady of the house. She looked me over the way someone might inspect an old piece of furniture, deciding if it was worth keeping. And in that one glance, I already knew my life was about to get harder. Valencia Mitchell. Even her name sounded like it had been dipped in gold. She was young, polished, and so sure of herself that she didn't even need to raise her voice to make you feel small. She walked me through her enormous house like it was a museum, pointing out every detail she wanted to be perfect. The marble counters had to be polished with a special cleaner from Italy. The hardwood floors could only be mopped with distilled water. Even the bathrooms no one used had to be scrubbed daily. Because you never know who might stop by, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I nodded through all her instructions, though I could feel something sharp under her words. She never once asked me about my experience, never asked what I'd been through or what I could offer. To her, I was just another piece of the staff, something to control, something to remind her of her own power. But when she told me the pay, $1,500 a week plus room and board, I said yes without hesitation. I needed the money too badly to think about how it made me feel. The first few days weren't unbearable. Valencia was gone most of the time, meeting with wedding planners, getting her nails done, spending hours at expensive boutiques. She left lists of chores for me, but it was manageable. The house was huge, but I knew how to work hard. I'd done it all my life. Still, the place felt cold. Even the little apartment above the garage where I stayed seemed more like a hotel room than a home. Neutral walls and personal furniture, not a trace of warmth. I'd set a framed photo of Clarence on the nightstand just to feel less alone. Everything changed the day her fiancé came home. I was dusting the shelves in the living room when I heard a man's voice calling out, deep and familiar in a way that made my knees weaken. "I'm home." I froze, the rag clutched in my hand. Valencia's voice answered, warm and sweet, completely different from the sharp tone she used with me. "Darling, you're back." Curiosity got the best of me. I stepped into the foyer just as she pulled him into her arms. And that's when my world tilted. He was tall, well-dressed, his smile easy and kind. Handsome, successful, yes, all of that. But none of it mattered. What mattered was the scar above his left eyebrow, the same scar Jeremiah got when he fell off his tricycle at 3. What mattered was the way his laugh rumbled deep in his chest, the way his eyes tilted just slightly at the corners like Clarence's had. My heart stopped. I knew that face. I had kissed it 1,000 times when it was still small enough to fit against my shoulder. "Delilah, this is Quentin," Valencia said, her voice dripping with satisfaction as though she owned the world. "Quentin, this is our new housekeeper." He extended his hand politely. His grip was firm, professional, but his eyes, there was something there, a flicker of confusion, almost like recognition. "Nice to meet you," he said. His voice was deep, steady, but hearing it sent me spiraling back 3 decades to a toddler boy humming to himself while lining up toy cars on the floor. I forced a smile, managed to nod. "Nice to meet you too, Mr. Rivers." Rivers. Not Washington. A different name, a different life. Of course. If he had been taken, he would have been given another identity. Maybe adopted, maybe shuffled through foster care. My mind raced with questions, but I kept quiet. I couldn't let Valencia see the storm inside me. Over the next few weeks, I studied him carefully. The way he drank his coffee black, the way he tapped his fingers when he was thinking, the way he hummed old songs when he was happy. Every detail cut deeper into me because it wasn't just memory, it was proof. Proof that this man was my son, my Jeremiah. But there was a problem. He adored Valencia. When he was near her, she turned into a completely different woman, soft, attentive, laughing at every joke he made. The cruel ice queen I knew vanished whenever he walked into a room. And he was blind to the difference. He saw her as perfect. When he was away, though, her mask came off. She found fault in everything I did. She inspected mirrors for invisible smudges, made me redo laundry I had already folded, and reminded me daily that I was the help. Her friends came over once, and she made me serve them while she told them I used to be a teacher but couldn't handle real work. They laughed. I wanted to disappear. I told myself to endure it. I needed the money. And maybe if I stayed long enough, I'd find a way to tell Quentin the truth. To tell him he wasn't abandoned. To tell him he was my son. But fear held me back. Fear that he wouldn't believe me. Fear that Valencia would twist my words and make me look like a liar. Fear that I would lose the one chance I had of being close to him again. So I stayed silent. And every night, in the privacy of that small apartment above the garage, I held the baby bracelets from the hospital in my hands and prayed for the courage I didn't yet have. The silence I kept was slowly crushing me. Each day that passed felt like another brick stacked on my chest. I wanted to tell him. God knows I wanted to scream it out. You are my son! You are Jeremiah! But I couldn't risk it. Valencia was always circling, always watching. And when Quentin wasn't home, her cruelty deepened. One morning, she cornered me in the kitchen. Her hair was tied back, her face bare, her robe dragging across the marble floor. Without makeup, she looked even sharper, like a blade hidden in silk. The guest bathroom mirror, she said, her tone flat. You missed the spot. I cleaned it yesterday, I replied softly. Then clean it again. And Delilah, let's make something clear. When Quentin is away, this house runs by my rules. You don't answer to him. You answer to me. If you ever think about complaining to him, don't. He trusts me more than he'll ever trust you. She smiled then, a cold smile that chilled me. You're nothing but the help. And don't forget, at your age, no one else would hire you. I kept my head down. Yes, ma'am. But inside, my hands were trembling with rage. She didn't know who she was talking to. She didn't know that the woman she treated like dirt had carried the man she planned to marry, had nursed him, kissed his forehead, and whispered songs into his tiny ears. Still, I swallowed the anger. Because survival meant silence. The weeks passed, and the wedding planning consumed her. Valencia became a hurricane of demands, flowers, guest lists, dresses that cost more than my car. And her temper grew sharper with each detail. One afternoon, she dragged me to her bridal salon fitting. The gown was breathtaking, silk pearls, a train that stretched across the room. She twirled in front of the mirror, waiting for me to gasp. What do you think, Delilah? She asked. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were baiting me. You look lovely, I said carefully. Lovely? She laughed loudly, drawing the attention of everyone in the shop. This dress costs more than you'll make in 2 years, and all you can say is lovely? Tell me, where do you even buy your clothes, Delilah? Walmart? The women around us snickered. My face burned, but I forced myself to stay calm. Wherever I can afford to, I answered quietly. Her laughter echoed like glass breaking. At least she's honest. She told the room, and the humiliation cut so deep I wanted to vanish. But I didn't. I stood there, my pride in shreds, because I needed this job. I needed to stay close to Quentin. That night, I told myself I'd had enough. I couldn't let this woman walk down the aisle with him without knowing the truth. He deserved better. I deserved to be heard. When Quentin came back from a business trip a few days later, I waited for him in the kitchen. My heart thudded as I rehearsed the words in my head. But when he walked in, tired yet smiling, carrying a small bag for me. "I brought you something from Chicago, Delilah." My courage vanished. Inside the bag was a silk scarf, soft and beautiful. The kind of gift you give someone you notice. "This is too much," I whispered. "Nonsense," he said warmly. "You take such good care of us. Valencia always tells me how wonderful you are." I glanced at Valencia. She was watching me with hawk eyes, her arm wrapped around his waist. "Isn't he thoughtful?" she said sweetly. But her gaze warned me, one wrong word, and I'd regret it. So I said nothing. I thanked him, excused myself, and went upstairs to cry into the scarf he had chosen. The weeks before the wedding became unbearable. Valencia was bridezilla in its purest form. She screamed at florists, belittled caterers, demanded impossible perfection. But with Quentin, she was honey and sugar. I began to wonder if I was losing my mind. Couldn't he see through her? Couldn't he see the cruelty just beneath her painted smile? On the morning of the wedding, the mansion transformed into something out of a magazine. White roses everywhere, silk draped over chairs, chandeliers glimmering like stars. 300 guests arrived in their finest clothes, laughing, networking, sipping champagne. I worked behind the scenes, polishing mirrors I'd already polished twice, stocking guest bathrooms, arranging tables. When the ceremony began, I peeked through the curtain. Valencia was radiant, gliding down the aisle like a fairy tale bride. Quentin's face lit with pure joy. He looked at her as though she were his entire world. My chest tightened. I couldn't bear it. Because I knew what he didn't. The woman he loved was a monster. And he was about to give her his life. I turned away from the window, telling myself it was too late. The wedding moved forward like a grand performance. Every detail Valencia had obsessed over came to life. The perfect flowers, the perfect music, the perfect smile plastered across her face. Guests gushed about how flawless everything was, but I knew the truth. Flawless was just another mask she wore. During the cocktail hour, I worked quietly in the kitchen, handing trays to the catering staff, making sure glasses were polished. I tried to keep out of sight, just like she ordered. But then the photographer walked in. She was young, with kind eyes, carrying a camera that seemed almost too heavy for her. "Do you mind if I snap a few shots of you working?" she asked softly. "I like to capture the people behind the scenes. Couples appreciate it later." I hesitated, then nodded. She snapped 2 quick pictures as I arranged flowers and wiped down a counter. "Just background," she promised. "Don't worry." I smiled politely, not knowing that those photos would later become a weapon Valencia would twist against me. That evening, the reception lit up the garden with string lights and music. Guests toasted with champagne, the band played sweet melodies, and everyone danced under the stars. Valencia floated through the crowd like a queen, Quentin never far from her side, his eyes full of pride. Then came the moment I dreaded, the mother-son dance. The band leader announced it, and I saw Quentin step forward, waiting. My heart clenched. This was supposed to be our moment. My boy in his tuxedo, my arms around him, just once in 30 long years. But instead, Valencia's mother stepped in. Guests cheered as she took my place. I stood in the shadows, watching my son dance with another woman, while I remained invisible. I had to leave. I went to a far bathroom, locked the door, and let my tears fall. When I came back, the party was in full swing. Valencia and Quentin twirled on the dance floor, laughing, kissing, the perfect picture. The wedding planner walked by me and whispered, "Isn't this just magical?" I nodded, but inside I felt sick. Magical was the last word I'd use. Later that night, I overheard Valencia in the hallway. Her voice was sharp, her tone full of venom. "I told you I didn't want her near the guests. And Mrs. Henderson saw her, talking to people like she belonged here." Quentin's reply was gentle, confused. "Valencia, she's been respectful. She keeps the house spotless. Maybe you misunderstood." "No!" Valencia snapped. "She undermines me. She looks at me like she knows something. I won't have her here anymore." There was a long pause, then Quentin sighed. "If it makes you uncomfortable, we'll make a change. 2 weeks' notice, after the honeymoon." Her voice softened instantly, dripping with sweetness. "Thank you, darling. I knew you'd understand." 2 weeks. After everything I'd endured, I had 2 weeks before I was tossed back into the world with nowhere to go. That night, while they celebrated with their guests, I sat alone in my small apartment above the garage, clutching the baby bracelets I still kept. And for the first time in months, anger burned hotter than fear. The next morning, while the house was quiet, I slipped into Quentin's office. Valencia usually kept it locked, but I found a spare key. The room was neat, orderly, just like the boy who used to line up toy cars in perfect rows. On a shelf, I found albums filled with pictures, his college years, his first business ventures, his proud smile. But the further back I went, the more my breath caught. Photos of a foster child. Papers tucked in the back. I pulled out one faded birth certificate. My hands shook as I read the name, Jeremiah Clarence Washington. Date of birth, March 15th. Mother, Delilah Marie Washington. Father, Clarence Robert Washington. I sank into the chair, sobbing. My boy. He wasn't just a memory, not just a dream. He was alive. He had grown into a man I could be proud of. And he had spent his life thinking we abandoned him. For hours I sat there with that paper pressed to my chest, crying for all the birthdays I'd missed, all the hugs I hadn't given, all the years that had been stolen. And I knew what I had to do. I had to tell him. No matter the risk, no matter what Valencia tried to do, he deserved to know the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I kept pacing my little apartment, clutching the birth certificate, whispering prayers I wasn't sure would be heard. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I'll tell him everything. I'll show him the truth. But Valencia always seemed to be one step ahead. The very next morning, she returned early from their honeymoon, dragging suitcases across the marble floor. She was tan, glowing, looking like she had just stepped out of a glossy magazine. Quentin had to fly to Los Angeles for business, she said, her voice casual but her eyes sharp. So, it's just you and me today. Perfect, because we need to talk about your future. She walked through the house, inspecting my work, tapping her fingers along polished surfaces that already gleamed. Then she turned to me, smiling coldly. You're fired. Effective immediately. Pack your things and be gone by tomorrow morning. My chest tightened. Please, Mrs. Rivers, at least let me speak to your husband before I go. There's something important he needs to know. Her eyes glittered with triumph. Oh, honey, there's nothing you need to say to my husband. I've already told him about your behavior at the wedding. He's disappointed in you. Another lie. But what could I do? She was determined to erase me from his life before I had the chance to speak. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the folder of documents, feeling like everything was slipping away again, just as it had 30 years ago when my children vanished. Then, headlights cut across the driveway. Quentin's car. He was home early. My heart pounded as I grabbed the folder and hurried downstairs. I could hear Valencia's voice in the foyer, soft and syrupy. "Darling, you're home! I've missed you." I stepped into the living room, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "Mr. Rivers, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Valencia spun around, her face twisting in fury. "How dare you! I told you to stay away from him." Quentin frowned, confused. "Valencia, let her speak. What's going on?" I held out the birth certificate with trembling hands. "Your name isn't Quentin Rivers. It's Jeremiah Clarence Washington. And I'm not just your housekeeper. I'm your mother." Silence fell heavy over the room. Quentin took the paper, scanning it slowly, his eyes moving from the faded ink to my face. Disbelief clouded his features. This can't be. She's lying!" Valencia snapped. "She's unstable, Quentin. I warned you she was obsessed. Don't listen to her." I shook my head, tears streaming. "You have a crescent-shaped birthmark on your neck, just below your ear. I used to kiss it every night when you were a baby." His hand lifted slowly, instinctively, to the exact spot. His eyes widened. "And you had a twin sister," I whispered. "Jasmine. You called her Jazzy. You two used to hold hands when you slept." Something shifted in his face. Recognition. Memories trying to surface. I dream about a little girl sometimes," he said quietly. "Like I'm supposed to protect her, but she disappears, and I wake up feeling like I've lost something." "Not a dream, baby," I said, my voice breaking. "A memory." Valencia's composure cracked. "Stop it, Quentin! She's manipulating you. You're mine. Do you hear me? Mine!" But Quentin didn't hear her anymore. His eyes were locked on mine, searching, desperate. "All these years," he whispered, "I thought my parents abandoned me." "We never abandoned you," I sobbed. "You were stolen from us. I searched for you every day for 30 years. I never stopped." The room spun with Valencia's shrieks and my tears, but Quentin reached for me, pulling me into his arms. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I believe you." Valencia's scream echoed against the marble walls. She hurled accusations, threats, every weapon she could find in her arsenal. But it didn't matter anymore. Her lies unraveled the moment Quentin held me, the moment he saw the truth for himself. For the first time in decades, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the help. I was a mother who had found her son. The fight with Valencia wasn't over that night. She would claw and scheme, try to hold on to the life she thought she had secured. But Quentin wasn't blind anymore. He knew what kind of woman she really was. And me? I walked out of that mansion with my head high, my son's arm around my shoulders, and a heart that finally felt whole again. Because after 30 years of grief and silence, the truth had finally spoken. And nothing, not Valencia, not money, not cruelty, could ever erase it.